The following message is brought to you by Mike Koplitz. He is an ordained elder in the United Methodist Church and an ordained Messianic rabbi. In chapter 10 of Luke's Gospel, starting on the 29th verse and going to the 37th verse, we have that famous story about the Good Samaritan. The narrative is actually a parable that was offered by Jesus as a response to the question of, who is my neighbor? I am sure that everyone listening or reading this message knows something about the parable. Even as a non-Christian, I knew about the story of the Good Samaritan. Therefore, I am not going to spend a lot of time talking about what the Samaritan did for the man that he found on the side of the road. You have heard that probably hundreds of times. But did you also know there's another idea of Jesus hiding in the parable that is missed by not only pastors, but Christian biblical scholars? One of the resources that I used in biblical research is a commentary titled Aramaic Light. This commentary series is based on the idea that the New Testament was originally written in Aramaic. The authors, who are Rocco Errico and George Lambsa, not only spoke about the Aramaic version of the New Testament and the meaning of those words, but also included the culture of the day. So I want to share with you an observation that is made by them that no one ever talked about. That subject is that there is no hierarchy inside the kingdom of heaven like we have in the world. All organizations of humans maintain a hierarchical system of the people with invisible social and mental boundaries. For the Jews of Jesus' day, the order was priest, Levite, Israelite, proselyte, and freed slave. The parable has the first three main characters, but not in the correct order. Yeshua speaks of the Israelite, the priest, and then the Levite. That would immediately catch the ear of the listener. Furthermore, Yeshua introduces a Gentile into the parable. By doing this, Yeshua is trying to break down the hierarchical system of importance to tell the listeners that in the kingdom of God there is no hierarchy. If you didn't know about the culture of Judea at the time, you would easily miss this. I will confess that I did not catch it until I saw it brought out by these Aramaic scholars. Even my seminary New Testament professor did not catch this. It is not in the Christian commentary, so it's understandable why it was missed. However, it is an incredibly amazing point that Jesus put into this parable. One of the things you need to look for in parables is the twist in the culture that should make you think twice about what's going on. Once you realize that the order was reversed, or slightly adjusted in this case, you will look deeper into the meaning of the parable. Parables have multiple meanings, and that is the beauty of Jesus' parables. Very few rabbis could create parables that were so beautifully done with multiple meanings. There is no hierarchy in heaven. That means nobody is of a higher rank than anyone else. That made me wonder if Jesus would be upset that the church that was created in his name definitely has a hierarchy. Not only hierarchy in the clergy, but hierarchy in the congregation and the members of the church. It is also interesting to me that when St. Paul created these churches, he only spoke of an overseer who helped the people learn what Christianity was according to Paul and follow the ways of Jesus. It makes perfect sense that someone has to be the leader. That's just the way it is. However, the church evolved into a gigantic hierarchy. We know historically that part of the creation of the hierarchy was so that the church could look at Rome and say, hey, we look like you. Stop persecuting us. Of course, that didn't work, so we are stuck with hierarchy. The Catholic Church is a prime example of hierarchy, And if you think about the different levels of hierarchy, you will start to see the Roman Empire hierarchy. Just with the clergy, you start with the simple priest, and then how many levels does it take to get to the Pope? I'm always concerned when I think about the different levels that I'm going to miss out on one. There are a lot. I think it's 6 levels, but it may be more. And of course, the Catholic Church has many bishops, archbishops, and cardinals in it. So the Protestant churches did away with a lot of that hierarchy, but they still left something behind. Bishops exist in all the church hierarchies that I'm aware of, except for the independent churches. Since these churches don't report to anyone, they really don't need to have a clergy hierarchy. But don't think that the laity is not subject to hierarchy, because, well, it is. Every church has what I'll call an underground hierarchy system of who is in charge and who we listen to. The power of the underground hierarchy can be pretty forceful, and if the pastor cannot figure out the hierarchy quickly, he or she will honestly succumb to it. That's just the way it is. As I said, in human organizations, hierarchies are always going to develop. People like to boss other people around, even in church. I know that sounds crazy, but it's true. A man named Max De Pree wrote a fabulous set of leadership books back in the 1990s. De Pree was the CEO of Herman Miller Company, which created high luxury office furniture for CEOs and other executives. He talked about the roaming leader in his first book on leadership. That is the person who has the true leadership and control, in this case of the church. In small family size, churches, we call them the matriarch or patriarch. Sometimes it's a married couple, sometimes it's not, who may not be on any committee, but everyone's going to look to see how they react to something new. Even when the church grows, the consultants will tell you that the hierarchy of the matriarch, patriarch disappears. But that is not the truth. It's always there, hidden in some other form. So the job of a pastor is to try to figure out what that hierarchy is, because that's the people you want on your side. How about the rest of us that are just in the congregation? For those who just come to church, they sit in a pew for 1 hour on Sunday, aren't usually concerned about such things. However, if you are a person who wants to work for Jesus Christ through your church and do good, not only for your congregation, but for the world around you, you have to figure out the hierarchy. Look for the person who is not in a position of power, but everybody listens to. Once you find that person, you have found the root of the hierarchy. Get that person on your side if you want to introduce some new mission or some other work that the church you feel should be doing. By finding the true roaming leader, you will find that it's easy to help steer your church to make disciples for Jesus Christ. Bear in mind, there are going to be people who are talking to this roaming leader about improving things inside the church because they're not concerned about outside the church. We really need to be concerned outside the church. That's another one of those little subtle messages that Jesus gives us in this parable. Consider for a moment that the Samaritan is a person who is a follower of Christ. Now consider the person hurt on the roadside, one who does not know Christ. The follower of Christ helps the non-follower of Christ. By offering Christ's love to that person, you have the opportunity to introduce the full breadth of Jesus to them. The next time you see someone who needs help, call out and help them, and let them know that you're helping them through the love of Christ, and that the love of Christ is available to them, even though they don't know it.
Thank you for listening to this message. I hope it blesses you in some way. And as always, Shalom.